Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Legal Issues of the Day. Today is an important day because we're closer to the national election. This is the most important time in American history. Today, I have my superstar panels, Attorney Milton Grimes. I have Attorney Milton Grimes, who famously represented Rodney King. Also, Attorney Vanita Banks, Masters in Tax, cybersecurity expert. And of course, the superstar Marion County prosecutor, Ryan Mears. How's everybody doing today?
All right.
Well,
Hi, Ryan. Vanita.
We're fantastic.
Great to see
there's
everyone.
so many issues that are facing us, and we have a lot of things going on in Indianapolis this weekend, so be safe, everyone. But to start off, I was talking to the prosecutor, and Indiana has an expungement law. But one of the things that disturbed me is that I had some folks I was talking to who had previously been convicted of felonies, and 3 people told me that when they were released, they were told that as a convicted felon, they can't vote. Prosecutor Mears, are they wrong? What's the law on that?
They're 100% wrong. And Indiana, like a lot of states, affords people who have had a nexus with the criminal justice system, you still have the opportunity to vote. And I want to get that message out to as many people as possible. Is just because you might have had a connection to the criminal justice system doesn't mean that deprives you of the right to weigh in on this election. And you absolutely can vote. You have the opportunity to vote. It's important in the state of Indiana. You have until October 7th to register to vote. But like you, Attorney Lee, I've run into quite a few people here recently who said, I'd love to vote, but I can't because of my past. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, do you put in a program in place? For example, do we have an expungement law here in Indiana, and how does it work?
So just today, Nate, we did one of our big second chance fairs at the Warren Township Government Center. We had a line that wrapped all the way around the building, served literally hundreds of people today to help people get felonies taken off their record, help people get their driver's license reinstated. These services didn't cost any money to anyone. We don't charge any fee. We waive all the reinstatement fees. We waive the court costs and filing fees. And people walk out there with their driver's license reinstated, and they walk out of there on the road to getting prior convictions expunged. The other thing that I will tell you about this is, when I'm dealing with people who are involved in the criminal justice system, if we can get people housed and if we can get people working, I don't see them in the criminal justice system. And so we have to help reduce those barriers. But one of the biggest challenges we have right now is people who have criminal histories are having a heck of a time finding a place to live. And if people don't have a place to live, they're more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. And so we're trying to reduce that barrier by taking those felonies, taking all those prior convictions off people's records so they can be employed, so they can have people rent to them, so they can be in housing. And it ultimately makes Marion County a safer and more fair place. I think the other thing we need to just take a pragmatic approach to this is there are very few people in our community who are going to jail for the rest of their life. And so when they come back into our community, we have to have a plan. How can we help those individuals? What can we do to help? And today was all about trying to set those individuals up for success. And I'll tell you, we partnered up with the League of Women Voters today. They were registering people there. They were encouraging people to vote. And we reminded everybody there that regardless of what your criminal history is, you can still participate in the democratic process.
Well, let me ask you something.
Good.
Go ahead, counsel. Go ahead.
Well, you wanted to ask Attorney Mears a question, so I don't want to break that.
Well, real quickly, when is the next time? Because we missed that today. I like to get that out there so everybody can know. When are you going to have this program again, Prosecutor Mears?
So we do it on a rolling basis. If people want to go to our website, they can sign up for the next event. I can tell you that, there are some people who didn't want to stick around and wait in the line. So we took all their email addresses, all their contact info so we could get them signed up for the next event. We'll probably do another one here in October. The great thing about this program, and I was telling Trustee Vernon Brown, who let us hang out at Warren Township today, he saw that line around the building. It speaks to so many people in our community who want to get help, who want to do the right thing. They just need an opportunity. And today was all about providing those individuals with opportunities. And as long as I'm prosecutor, we're going to continue to provide those opportunities directly to people in the community.
One other question: was there an opportunity for people then to register to vote once that process was done?
Absolutely. So the League of Women Voters, they were there. They had all the paperwork there. They had all the information that people need to register to vote. I think the last time I talked to them, they had 46 people registered to vote, who came in, took the time to sign up, registered to vote. A lot of the, very encouraging, a lot of the people who showed up were already registered, but we got 46 new people registered to vote, and hopefully we can continue those numbers and increase our level of civic participation.
Attorney Banks, go ahead.
Attorney Mears, I'm glad that you raised the word second chance, because as I was preparing for our show today, I was thinking about my Illinois Congressman, Danny Davis, who a large part of his legacy is the Bipartisan Second Chance Act. This is the federal law that was originally passed in 2007. And it was reauthorized again in 2018, and it is up currently for reauthorization this year. It's been introduced, and it has bipartisan support and sponsorship. And this act provides funding and reauthorizes programs intended, Attorney Mears, to reduce recidivism, invest in communities, and promote public safety. Because we know that when our citizens return back to society after having paid their debt to society, as you mentioned, they don't have jobs, they don't have housing, they don't have access to health care. So it's so important and critical that the federal government as well as state budgets include funding to ensure that our returning citizens are successful. As you stated, our people, our citizens were wrapped around the corner for your program today. And as you said, they want to do well, and they deserve a second chance of becoming productive citizens in our society. They deserve the right to vote. In fact, most states, including Indiana, Illinois, and California, and many others, have laws which restore the right to vote automatically. You don't have to, pass any test or pay any money. Now, there's some states like Florida that have laws restoring the right to vote, but there are many impediments toward exercising that right, including paying fees for different things that are in that legislation. Virginia, I believe, is the only state, and we need to work on this, colleagues, that permanently bars all citizens with past convictions from voting at all. So I'm really happy that we're talking about this issue today. Certainly, we need more federal funding, Attorney Mears, for the types of initiatives that you just so eloquently summarized and are leading in your state.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the federal funding. So we're actually the beneficiary of federal funds to help us fund this program. So the people on staff who are working on this, they're actually doing this on a federal grant. And the other thing I would just point out to all your listeners around the country is, if we're serious about people coming back into our community and helping them, we have to give them a path to be successful. We have to say, this is how we can help you be successful. And too oftentimes what we do to people who are coming out of the Department of Corrections is we give them, $25 on a bus ticket and say, good luck. That's not a plan. And that's not going to help people get on the road to success. And so we have to utilize these services and these opportunities to help people get in a position where they can find that job, where they can find housing, where they can get reconnected to their families, so they can become productive members of our community. And so much of that relies on federal funding in the Second Chance Act that you just mentioned, that we've personally benefited from, because we're looking for opportunities to help people when they come back into the city of Indianapolis.
Ryan, are you fully supported by your constituents? Because you are unusual from my experience and belief and my reading. How do you stay in office with that type of mentality?
Well, I mean, hopefully people take a pragmatic approach and take an outcome-based approach to this. You know, and when you talk to people who are coming back, a lot of people, they want to do the right thing, but they need those opportunities. And when I tell people, like when we talk about dismissing outstanding traffic tickets or dealing with people who have suspended driver's license, a lot of these crimes are crimes of poverty. You know, people are, you know, they get pulled over, you know, because they didn't come to a complete stop and they get a $160 ticket and then they don't have the money to pay that ticket. And then we suspend their license and then we throw on these ridiculous reinstatement fees. That doesn't make it safer. That doesn't help our community. So by us setting aside those fees, we're not doing anything other than giving that person a chance to be successful. And that's a message that we really try to convey to people, is that we're trying to take an outcome-based approach here. We all want to see crime decrease. And I'm telling you, the best way for crime to decrease is to get people working and get people into housing. And barriers to that too often time are convictions and not having a driver's license. And so if we can do something proactive to help individuals do those things, I think that's a message that resonates with the community. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great supporters, including Attorney Lee, and we won by a pretty healthy margin. So I think we feel good about what we're doing in the community's response to it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. The next issue, though, is a big bomb that was dropped this week. Prosecutor Mears, David Williams, I've met him, the U.S. attorney there in New York, Southern District, but he filed criminal charges against the mayor of New York, the largest city in America. I don't get the timing of filing these criminal charges for election fraud at this time. I thought that the federal government, they had an unspoken rule that you don't file criminal charges to affect the outcome of a national election 45 days before the election. Did I misread that, or I don't get that.
I mean, I feel like this is the second time this has happened, because the FBI kind of went out of their way to sabotage Hillary 30 days before the election as well. I mean, generally speaking, the Department of Justice says that they want to stay out of elections and they don't want to interfere. And you mentioned kind of they have that buffer zone right before the election because they don't want to be perceived as influencing turnout or influencing an election. And here we have probably one of the biggest indictments in the history of our country, where a sitting mayor in our largest, you know, probably most important city, for a variety of reasons, has been indicted under, you know, from a variety of charges. And to do this on, you know, basically the doorstep of an election, the timing definitely seems rather curious. The other thing I would say about this is, I mean, I think it's important to remember, hopefully, you know, we're all attorneys on here and everybody who's listening, it's very important that we respect everybody's due process rights. And what is contained in that indictment is an allegation. And so, you know, there's always a rush to judgment, but I always think it's important for people to understand that it is only an allegation. But it seems to me that these allegations could have been made the second week of November, as opposed to the last week of September, when we lived in such a supercharged political environment. This is going to do nothing but kind of distract from the issues, and also might impact turnout in different parts of the country.
You have any thoughts on that, Milton? Did you think that was a little bit strange, Milton, Attorney
I
Grimes?
think it was definitely strange, unusually strange, and it does affect one's due process rights. Absolutely.
All the facts are not in, of course. The, 51-page indictment was just unsealed today. But my understanding is that when we talk about Turkey and the so-called, again, these are allegations and not the mayor of New York is presumed innocent at this time. And so my understanding, based on the 5-count indictment, that in addition to the indictment being announced on the, the throes of the election, it's almost 3 years to the day, I understand, when the Turkey embassy in New York was opened. And you may be aware that this is the week where the UN is convening in New York. And so query relative to the timing as well, with respect to the DOJ's pronouncement of the indictment today. These allegations have to do with campaign finance contributions from Turkey public officials. And one of the allegations has to do with the Turkey consulate in New York not being ready to open because of safety and other issues, and allegedly, the mayor pressed very hard on fire and other officials to get the Turkey embassy open. And what's interesting to me about these allegations is that they are alleged to, some of the alleged actions date back to 2014. What do you think?
Wow.
I guess I have a problem. I'm looking at the Combs case, and now I'm seeing this case against a Black man. And I think when you try cases through the media, you have the effect of prejudicing and drumming up bias against the person that you say is presumed innocent, Vanita. And no matter how many times you say presumed innocent, the more stuff you throw in the media against that person, that presumption of innocence take a little step down, I believe, to the public. And so I think it's terribly unfair to publicize indictments and prosecutions before trial has been completed in the media for anybody.
Well, this thing by Damon Williams, who I've met, I was trouble for a different reason. The manner in which he did the press release on Sean Combs, which I've never met, he says, he advertises, goes on every TV station, he sends out a press release, if you have been a victim of Combs' alleged abuse, or if you know anything about his alleged crime, we urge you to come forward, period. This investigation is far from over. So he's actually getting $1 million in free publicity to advertise, to solicit people to file criminal charges, whether true or not. When you look at the civil suits, they were like 20, 30 years old. And so now when I look at this, the person who's supposed to be involved in some prostitution is an adult female. And I don't get that. I don't understand why it became a federal crime for prostitution of an adult. I mean, I see that in some states, you go out to Nevada, is legal. So I don't understand that at all. As to then the second part about it, I'm not a Combs fan, but how does prostitution elevate to the fact that you don't get a bail?
I'm not a Combs fan either, but what you see on TV is unfortunately him kicking and striking his former girlfriend, a matter that has been settled, I don't know, some time now for $30 million or $31 million. And it's not part of the prosecution. So you're using something that's been resolved to raise bias, prejudice, and resentment towards this man. And I think the ultimate effect of it is to affect his right to a fair trial. What do you think, Mears?
Well, and I had a question for you, Attorney Grimes. You know, when you read the Diddy indictment and then you read Eric Adams' indictment alleges very specific facts and lays out these are the dates, these are the specific things, and it's a 50-some page indictment. Mm-hmm. Sean Combs' indictment is 14 pages and doesn't contain those specific allegations that you typically see in a federal indictment. I was curious, have you seen indictments like that? Because usually when I see indictments, they kind of have the underlying facts are more clearly laid out.
The typical indictment does lay out the case pretty well. And when you run across a few-page indictment with scanty facts, I think it indicates what type of case is coming forward. But the bias that you gender up against that person with the showing repeatedly on a daily basis his mistreatment of his girlfriend, and I don't agree with it whatsoever, I think it affects his right to a fair trial.
I think you're absolutely right with respect to your point regarding the video being, quote, leaked. And it's possible that that video was part of this confidential settlement, right? And you're absolutely right. That's going to create bias and um, portray Mr. Diddy, you know, as a violent perpetrator. The 14-page indictment states it alleges sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution, to your point, Attorney Lee, but there's no allegations that there were any minors involved in this so-called racketeering in accordance with the RICO Act. One of the things that troubles me, however, Attorney Mears, Nathaniel, and Grimes, is that when prosecutors bring these racketeering cases, you know, under RICO, don't they usually have or believe they have a very, very strong case?
Yes, they usually do. They usually do, with the specificity in it.
I'm wondering what a lot of people are saying across the country is that, you know, you indict Mr. Diddy and then who knows what's going to happen, you know, at this point. You know, those parties that were alleged to have happened, lots of people attended those parties, right? I mean, many celebrities across Hollywood attended those parties. And so I'm not sure, you know, at this point, what the angle is going to be in this case. Let me also mention, in addition to the indictment not making any allegations regarding any minors being involved in this alleged criminal activity, there's no allegation of any, quote, non-consensual activity.
Vanita, what you say, you wonder what people are saying. People are saying he is guilty. He's stereotypical of the average Black man. He's brutal. He beat a woman. That's what they're saying, because that's what they see. It's not even associated with the indictment, but in your psyche, in your mind, you're saying he's guilty. He's got to be punished. That's how
a great point.
Looking at it.
That's a great point, and that is a huge injustice.
Yes.
Disparity that needs to be called out, as you're doing, Attorney Grimes. And we saw this again in the case of, there have been a couple cases now where evidence was based on documentaries. You'll recall the R. Kelly case, for example, when there was this huge documentary, and now we're seeing these Netflix series and HBO having series about particular individuals. And then, to your point, then we have prosecutors, Mr. Mears, which may be absolutely appropriate. You know, we saw in the R. Kelly case in Chicago, our prosecutor, you know, she solicited, you know, women who may have been injured to step up, you know, and disclose that they had been a victim of Mr. Kelly. So it's a very complex situation.
The playing field is tilted when you do that. The average human being, even though you're perfect coin, as you see, with a lot of money, cannot balance the power of the government. That's why the government is held to a higher standard of integrity, in my belief. You understand? They don't have the right to go under, as Michelle Obama say. They're supposed to be on the high road. Am I right, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a prosecutor, anytime you make a statement to the community or to the media, you're kind of balancing that interest of, we have a duty to inform the public, to let the public know what we are doing and what we are alleging. Because when you don't say anything, people kind of fill in the blanks on their own, and that isn't helpful. But at the same time, you can't editorialize, and you can't really step out beyond kind of the basic underlying facts that are only alleged. And so as a prosecutor, you're constantly trying to balance, hey, we have a duty to inform, but at the same time, we can't editorialize these facts. We can't act as if these are 100% true, because they haven't been challenged in a court of law. And so it's really this difficult balancing test, I think, for prosecutors when they make those public statements, to let people know this is what we are alleging. We're not saying we have convicted anyone. We're not saying that these facts are 100% accurate and true, because they haven't been tested yet. But at the same time, you do have an obligation to tell the community, this is what we're doing, this is what we're working on, this is why we think we can hold somebody really indefinitely, like they're doing in Puffy's case.
But not promote incidents and facts, Ron, that has not been tested by the jury. You can inform the public, but like in some countries, you can't speak about the trial pretty much, other than the person is being prosecuted. But to talk about the evidence and what was done and what was not done, that is illegal.
Well, how is, back to Nathaniel's point about the attorney that was soliciting people to come forward, how is that any different from trial lawyers soliciting victims of Ozempic or victims of, other injuries, J&J, for example? I mean, how is that any different?
Well, the rules of
I know
ethics-
they're people versus corporations, so there's a difference there, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
Criminal law
Well,
has a little bit different requirement of an individual's liberty being taken away. And I see a difference in that.
That's a great point. Civil versus criminal, obvious difference. Sometimes these corporations are being, held criminally liable as well. But for the most part, the cases that you would be prosecuting, Attorney Lee, that I'm referencing, would be on the civil side. You're
Well,
absolutely
okay.
right, Attorney Grimes.
As a general rule, since the Garvard case, our professional rules have allowed attorneys to advertise under Rule 7.2. So lawyers can advertise, but they cannot make material misrepresentation, and they're not allowed to exaggerate, right? So, but we see that lawyers have been pushing the bounds in these advertisements, and they basically look like they basically are violating, in my opinion, some are violating the rule. But on the other hand, the prosecutor is for the people. So their job is to enforce justice. And what that Damon Williams is doing, in my opinion, is that he's doing solicitation under Rule 7.2. I think what he's doing is not ethically appropriate, because what he's done is that he's soliciting clients, which he's doing advertisement, he's creating bias in the community. And also, I thought it's ludicrous to say no bail for what is amount to prostitution, which is one of the oldest things in the American culture. There's prostitution in probably every city in America. And nowhere have I ever seen anybody jail without bail for prostitution type crimes. I just don't get that. I can understand R. Kelly, those were minor children. Here we're talking about what appears to be consenting adults who got paid a lot of money. And that's why I have a problem with this whole process. I think that justice should be fair and equal, and whether you're a fan of this guy or not, it just seemed like to me grossly unfair. And next time I see Damon Williams, I let him know that.
And then you have to wonder whether or not some of these celebrities are have access to the best attorneys in the country.
They have access to the most expensive lawyers in the country. I'm not sure whether or not those are the best lawyers.
Well, that is exactly
Right.
my point, based on some of the points that you're making, Attorney Lee.
Yeah, I watched firsthand some high-profile cases, and the prosecutors here are highly trained. but the defense lawyers in some cases aren't. And so the net result is that some of the cases I've watched, I thought that the defense was inadequate, in my opinion. And some of the cases I've seen over the country, the same thing.
Our Kim Fox in Illinois was walking a very, very delicate line, with that case. And these are just complex situations. And as you stated, Attorney Lee, there's a distinction between the minors allegations in the Kelly case, and in the Combs case, there hasn't been any such allegations made.
Well, okay, back to Eric, the mayor's office. I'm deeply concerned about the obvious. We're in a highly contested presidential race. Every day they bring out new polls. We got one candidate who was a 45th president who doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie. And if you look at the MSN, I sent something to DNC today. There were 22 pictures of Donald Trump on MSN and only 2 of Kamala Harris, just 2. And so by just looking at the screen, there's an extra $1 million in free publicity. Now, half the stuff he's talking about is crazy as heck. I mean, just crazy stuff. We got people eating dogs and cats and birds and stuff like that. He's just making stuff up. And then what bothered me is that the tone of the campaign, I've watched something that he's relitigating the 2016 election. Now they're making immigration, saying that these immigrants are criminals and thugs. And now for our listening audience, there's something that's important you need to know. In the United States of America, probably 2-3% and most of the citizens in our country are Native American. That means that 96-97% of the people in our country came into our country, either through immigration or slavery. That's the way the American people, the American United States of America was populated. So we've always had immigration in America. We've always had it. And so now it's become a political football. And these charges, I think, distract away from the fact that we have some important distinction between the candidates. And I'm afraid that this last minute filing of these criminal charges, which could have waited until November 12th, 15th, there was no reason why, in my opinion, that these charges should have been filed at this moment in time. I'm not making a prediction of whether or not the mayor is guilty or innocent. I'm just saying I thought the administrative process, and that's what my concern is, Attorney Banks and Grimes and Mears, I have some serious concerns about that. And when I see the Combs puffy crime charges, whereby the prosecutors going out soliciting people, holding a person in jail for prostitution on a 14, it just bothers me. I'm thinking there's a disconnect here in that office, in my opinion.
Well, and one thing I would just say is, the vice president's out on the campaign trail today doing events, and she's constantly being asked about the mayor of New York, as opposed to the things that she wants to talk about, which are the reasons why people should elect her the next president of the United States. And so this idea that this indictment is not going to impact the election, I think is not accurate, because just today we saw that virtually every Democrat on the national stage was asked about the indictment. The vice president was, the governor of Minnesota was, certainly Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, everybody in that area of the country were commenting on these issues. And I think it just speaks to the fact that this is going to dominate the news cycle and take away from the points that people have in terms of why it's important in terms of who we elect as the next president. And that's where the focus needs to be, as opposed to, what the mayor of New York City may or may not have done. And now we have candidates on the defensive responding and trying to defend other Democrats, or talking about what other Democrats are doing, as opposed to talking about, what a how misguided the country was, going in the wrong direction under Donald Trump and all the crazy things that he stands for and represents. And so I think it's really important that all of us, it's gossip, it's rumors, it's bold-faced names, but at the end of the day, we have a really important election that's going to involve really substantive issues. And the more that we can talk about those substantive issues, the better off the country is going to be, because I certainly firmly believe that the vice president has way better answers to those questions than Donald Trump ever could.
So why did this indictment come down now? What was the urgency?
It doesn't make any sense to me. They just did the Diddy indictment. The Southern District of New York is clearly working very hard. Why does it matter? What if you wait 40 days? How does this substantially change the investigation? What do you gain by doing it now as opposed to waiting another 4 weeks? The case isn't fundamentally going to change. You're not worried about, there's no immediate safety concerns. Some of the things that typically make prosecutors act a little bit more quickly. None of those things exist in this case. And so I do think the timing, and I don't know if anybody asked the U.S. attorney that today, but certainly I would be very interested into their answer in terms of the timing of why right now.
I agree with that assessment, Attorney Mears. As I'm looking, at this indictment, they're talking about between 2016 and October 2023. He allegedly committed 23 different overt acts, including accepting free flights and hotel rooms.
Bribes.
Bribes, violation of wiretapping laws. But again, no reason to announce this indictment today based on the allegations in the indictment. I just don't see it. It's very troubling to me.
Yeah, very terrible now that a sitting Supreme Court judge is taking a couple $1 million from billionaire people and got cases from friends in front of the court.
And you're looking at decades in prison, according to what I've seen. The maximum penalties could be for these alleged violations of federal election laws and other laws. And we're talking about $100,000 of round trip tickets, heavily discounted stay at a suite at the St. Regis. And that one trip was worth over $41,000. And if they're saying that there were payments of they say that he accepted over $123,000 worth of luxury travel benefits without disclosing any of it. So the crime is the failure to disclose in accordance with the federal election contribution laws. But again, on the other hand, we have a sitting Supreme Court justice with life tenure who's accumulated a lot more than that. So it's just.
Well, Attorney Banks
troubling.
Also, he took a pass on the Trump indictment. In other words, the U.S. attorney, when they prosecuted Michael Cohen, the unindicted co-conspirator with Donald Trump. And so the Cohen indictment in the state court, the last 3 sections dealt with the federal indictment. In other words, so Trump was not indicted for this office for doing election violation, which he could have in the Southern District of New York, but he did not. He could have filed charges for the numerous financial fraud. He did not. And so I don't get this. We saw this occur before. I remember very vividly when Hillary Clinton was in the race against Donald Trump. In September, she went up by double digit. It was, they had the Planet Hollywood release, and Trump was sinking in the polls like a rock in the ocean. And then all of a sudden, he made this announcement, Coleman, who's a Republican, by the way, announcement that she was under investigation for a particular crime. And then the mantra became, lock her up, lock her up. And within 48 hours, she went from 9 points up to 2 points down in 48 hours. And I know people, I would get the internal poll, which is shocking as to how that one event changed the course of American history. And that's why, with that background, this guy knows that for sure. He knows the history. So what would be the motivation for a person who knows this history? And I thought they had a policy. Why would he file charges that he knows are going to populate the news media for the next week, nonstop?
Nate, who's his superior? Does he have the authority to pull the trigger on that call? Or does he have to go above himself to get the approval for that?
My understanding, I worked on this committee, they're autonomous and they have discretion, but political, they do have a chain of command in DC, as you know, and, Merrick Garland. And I'm not sure how this matter would have been done because I've never worked for the Justice Department, so I don't have any insight on that process. I saw what happened during the Trump administration because it all became public. The Attorney General was intimately involved with what was going on in the Southern District of New York, and he had them to pull the plug, and then he put pressure on them to put more pressure on Michael Cohen and make his sentence harsher. So we saw the direct involvement, and that came out, but I'm not sure of the process in this case.
I'm wondering why several high-level officials have resigned as well in the mayor's administration.
Yeah, one thing, just to kind of answer one of Nate's questions about what's that chain of command look like. I mean, typically in situations like this, there's going to be some level of approval or notification to Main Justice, and the folks at the Main Justice Department are going to weigh in, especially when you're doing a case of this magnitude involving a sitting mayor of the country's largest city. And so that would usually typically be run by Main Justice, and not just at the stage of the indictment, but as they're doing search warrants on the mayor's phones and his iPads and all the things that they did, there's got to be some level of communication and approval as you go through that process. Now, I will tell you, the Southern District of New York, it's NYSD, is typically known as the Sovereign District of New York, meaning that they don't always follow all the guidelines laid out by the Justice Department in terms of what that notification process is supposed to look like. I'm not sure exactly what took place in this situation, but typically there would be notification to Main Justice about what they were doing, and Main Justice would have the opportunity to weigh in, if not, put their foot on the scale in terms of what they thought was appropriate or not.
You would imagine that he didn't just pull this trigger without the approval of somebody above him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's not the president of the United States.
Well, in the mayor's 3 years in office, he's appointed 3 different police commissioners, and his first Department of Building commissioner was indicted on corruption charges. And then, of course, we're discussing the charges at that time against the mayor that were ongoing. And then a second police commissioner was tied to a possible extortion ring. So there's a lot going on there, gentlemen, in New York.
This is just another day in New Jersey.
His chief counsel, stepped down, and he stated today in a press conference that he's the target of his policies on immigration.
Who stated that?
Mayor Adams.
Well,
that's why he's a target, because of his policies, his immigration policies. Now, the other thing that I will say is that his poll numbers, have not been great, and have been as low as, and I don't have today's numbers, or the day not today, but yesterday's prior to this, because that may impact the polls. But they had been as low as 16%. Earlier this year.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was kind of surprised to see that.
Well, do we expect this to be another dig at Ms. Harris?
I'm sure that will be the strategy, in as much that there's no discussion of, policies, economic policies, and only negative, using race and hate to continue to divide the country, because for them, that's a winning strategy.
Right.
It also covers up for the fact that they don't have an economic policy, and they don't stand for anything economically. At least, it used to be with Republicans, you'd at least count on, hey, we're going to lower taxes and we're going to rein in spending. That wasn't true for him at all. I mean, he had the biggest expansion of government and did more to contribute to the national debt than any other president. And so there is no underlying economic policy as it relates to them, which is why they don't want to talk about it. They'd rather call people names and make up ridiculous allegations about immigrants, because that's a lot easier than having an actual plan.
Well, what we learned firsthand is that from 1929 until the day Trump took office, the federal deficit was around $21 trillion. In 44 months, he ran up $8 trillion. So Donald Trump is 25% of the federal deficit he created under his administration. Now, what did he do? He created massive tax rates for billionaires. But the other thing he did that was really, really dumb, and he's a big tariff freak, folks. Now, what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax on goods that you buy. So if China submit, say, for example, a Christmas gift, say it's a doll, and the doll costs $100, the 10% tariff is paid by you as a consumer. So China doesn't pay for the tariffs, you do. And so a tariff is a regressive form of taxation, because if people make less money, they use more consumable goods. So they're paying a bigger share of their earnings on the goods that they are purchasing. And so the idea that somehow a tariff would not cause inflation is idiotic, is nonsensical. If you're going to pay 10% more for the things you use on a daily basis, I learned a long time ago, for example, that Walmart, way back when I used to go down to Bentonville, they used to transport $1 billion a week, or $1 billion a week of goods from China. Walmart used to do $1 billion per week. And now, I'm not sure what they're doing now, they're probably doing a lot more. But the point is, that'd have been 1.1 billion, and that 10% would be paid by the Walmart customer. So you went in the store to buy something that would cost 10% more of the typical good. And so keep that in mind, and that's an anomaly. We have a person actually saying that he's going to tax the middle class and poor folks, which is idiotic. And so now we have a campaign. We see these campaigns all the time. I remember one of the most frustrating things I did in Milton Bonita, in our local prosecutor's race, for example. When our last prosecutor ran, we had a candidate who had never been in a courtroom but once, ran for prosecutor. It's the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. It was just sad.
What line was it?
Yeah, but she was totally unqualified, and they put thousands of dollars in that smear campaign. And so you see that, and now you see it nationally. So now they have no program, no agenda. And so what they do, they distract by saying, we're going to talk about immigration. The reason why the economy is bad, but the economy is good right now. We have a very low unemployment. We have great health care. The stock market is over 40,000. The stock market. If you had invested $1,000 in the stock market on the normal type mutual fund 4 years ago, your $1,000 would be worth $1,800 a day. If you invest in a company like NVIDIA, your $1,000 would be worth about $6,000.
With all your pluses, Nate, why isn't the needle moving a little north for the Democratic Party if all this good is happening? What's happening?
Well, it's moving north, and this race is going to be very, very tight.
Yeah.
go ahead. I wanted to look at, these battleground states. I just got some information to show just how very tight it is. But go ahead, Attorney Grimes, and
No, that's my question. Why isn't it moving larger to the north, to winning side? It doesn't seem like much has changed.
Well, Trump supporters, he will get 46% of the vote if you go out and shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. He'll get the same percentage. And I have some Trump supporters that are friends of mine. And they all say one thing repeatedly. The one thing they say that tells you that they're a true Trump supporter, we believe nothing the news media say. They're all a bunch of liars. I said, okay, but where do you get your news from? Fox News? Well, they won't admit to Fox News. So they think
social.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But Fox News, I tell them, I say, do you realize that Fox News paid out $750 million because they were chronic liars? Chronic liars. And one of the defense was that we're not a news station, we're an entertainment station. In other words, this was such a ridiculous thing. And I'm thinking, and so even when you talk to these folks and everything that they say that's inherently wrong, illogical, they still don't change their position because they do not believe. And then they'll come up with these esoteric things. I'm thinking, where do you get that from? That came straight out of Russia someplace, this misinformation cycle. I say,
They're entrenched.
I
They're
don't know if it's, I don't know if
Go
it's
ahead.
Fox necessarily or the news. I was reading an article 2 days ago, I think, they were interviewing young Black men in Philadelphia, and 3 of them they named, and they essentially agreed that their position was the president office or the presidency has not done anything for me in my life, so it doesn't matter who's president. That's how these young Black men felt. And I don't know how widespread that belief is, but I do know amongst some young men that I know, they have absolutely no interest in this government system.
Well, that's very true. And I think you have to meet everybody where they are. And when you talk about Black men, we shouldn't impose, our judgment on Black men, right? We shouldn't say, oh, you should vote because we got to save our democracy. That's not going to appeal to a certain demographic of Black men, right? And this is intergenerational as well. And so baby boomers may have a different philosophy regarding voting Democratic and or voting for our Vice President Kamala Harris than the millennials or younger people. Also, there's going to be a class difference, right? You're talking about potentially a difference between college educated and higher African Americans and our working class Americans. And so when you talk to them, you have to ask them, what is it that you need? Give me 3 things that you would like to see happen that would make your life better. That's the approach, as opposed to the approach that many have been using. And so we've got to listen to our Black men and others in terms of where they are. Now, one of the things that can't not necessarily be, well, let me just back up and say that we should be hearing loud and clear that our vice president is committing a $50,000 tax deduction, I believe it is, for small business. That's huge. That's going to positively impact African-American men, that are leading Black businesses, including barbershops and others, across this country. When we talk about the $6,000 increased child care credit, I mean, those are all things that if we can take the approach of what do you need, give me 3 things that would help that would improve your life. We may get some they may may have some residents, not saying it right. They may resonate, with some of our family and friends that we're talking to.
Well, one of the things I thought that was most significant is that when I grew up, we did not have the ability, my family didn't have the ability to own a home. So the first home that I lived in was the one that I purchased myself after I became a lawyer. But Harris promised $25,000 down payment aid for first-time home buyers. So our idea is to create 3 million more housing opportunity for Americans. Right now, we've seen a significant problem in terms of leasing, renting, and buying homes. We did get some relief this week when the Fed dropped the interest rate down a little bit. But the problem right now, because of the pandemic, the worst probably that we've seen in our lifetime and the worst managed by the Trump administration, we've seen the prices of homes just skyrocket.
And inventory is low.
Yeah, the inventory is low because in our city, for example, Wall Street people have been buying up all the houses. And what they do is once they buy the houses, the rent on these houses went from $500 a month to like $2,000 a month. And so each of the people I've talked to, they're paying a minimum of $2,000 a month for these houses that they used to pay $500, $600, or $700. Whereas the investment banking firms, whoever owning them, they spend very little to fix it up. They put cosmetic stuff on, and then they charge exorbitant rents. And we're seeing the same thing with our apartment units. Apartments that was $800 a month, they're now $1,800 a month because there's a short supply of housing unit in our city. And it's probably having the same problem in your cities and towns.
Absolutely. And our vice president has articulated that she's going to go after price gouging, whether it be these unscrupulous corporations, investment corporations that you're talking about, Nathaniel Lieb, or these companies buy these properties for investment purposes, and also going after those that would unreasonably raise pricing for food.
Yeah, that's tragic. But
and other necessary goods and services.
Well, we're at the end of our show, but there's one final comment I'm making. That is that, folks, there's a short time for you to make sure that you're properly registered to vote. Once you get this message today, go on the internet and check your voter registration to make sure that you're properly registered. It took me probably no more than about 30 to 45 seconds. Once I typed my name in, date of birth, I populated on the website. Not only did it show that I was properly registered, then they gave me a list of everybody that's on the ballot in my district here in the city. So I know who's running for president, vice president, governor, it lists all the candidates and their political affiliation. Then it even lists the school board race. However, people in Indianapolis, though, a good friend of mine, Tony Ashford Wolfson, is running for Pike School Board. So the people in Pike Township, give a big shout out. Make sure you vote first for Tony Ashford Wolfson for the Pike School Board. I appreciate your assistance in this matter. I think that she'll do a great job for the people and the kids in Pike Township School District. Any closing comment, folks?
Go out and vote. And if you have a problem, call Vanita Banks. She's in Chicago.
Go to vote.org, which will provide everything you need regarding registration and voting. Here in Illinois, early voting started today, and we are a model state with respect to enabling our citizens to exercise their right to vote. You can vote by mail, you can vote early, you can vote you can register and vote on the same day as the national election in Illinois. But check your voter registration status anyway. Check it on a weekly and daily basis. And this year we've got to do more than one thing. We've got to vote. We've got to mail postcards to the swing states. If you are in Illinois and Indiana, please join us in knocking on doors in Wisconsin, one of the major swing states. And also when you review your ballot, make sure you review the referendums that may be on the ballot that may impact you, as well as it's important to know who the judges are, because we know that judges matter.
Yes, they do. Ryan?
I think President Obama said it best, don't boo, vote. And I think that's what we're encouraging everybody to do.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, important guests, I guess, and Prosecutor Mills. Thank you so much. And go out and vote, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank
See ya.
you. And happy Circle City Classic weekend.
Yes.